Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched. Using a deadly nerve agent, Assad choked out the lives of helpless men, women, and children.
The United States launches a military strike against Syria in retaliation for the chemical weapons attack used on its own civilians earlier this week, killing more than 80 people, including children. According to U.S. officials, warships launching Tomahawk cruise missiles from the Mediterranean Sea, hitting the airbase that carried out those chemical attacks. And this morning, Britain, Australia, Israel, Saudi Arabia reacting to the airstrike, saying they are backing the U.S. military move. Iran strongly condemning it, Russia calling it an act of aggression and saying it would call for emergency meetings with the United Nations over this. Moscow also threatening to shut down military cooperation with the United States. 6 people were killed in these U.S. airstrikes. And to give us more perspective on this morning is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. I know you've had a busy morning already.
Yeah, it's good to be with you.
Many outlets want your perspective on this. You have long been calling for intervention and action against the Assad regime. So tell me how you felt when you saw this and about the timing of it in particular.
I can tell you not only us, but every Syrian American I know is saying finally, the world, the free world that has militaries that are forces for good, as our military is, and as I served in the Navy, is finally making tyrants, genocidal tyrants like Assad blink, and he will now take a different assessment when he decides to act inhumanly. Remember how we got here? 8 years of inaction against evil, 500,000 dead, 10 million displaced, half of the Syrian population. So the crimes against humanity have been piling on and on. So finally we have a president that listened to his military, a military that told him that inaction is much more of a risk to our country, to the regional security, to the Syrian people, to humanity, than action would be, and we did something.
Many have found it surprising because it seems to be, and as we spoke about in the commercial break, a 180 just from comments days ago from Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, and also sort of a 180 from President Trump out on the campaign trail as well. I mean, focusing on nationalism, that the United States is no longer, needed to be the watchdog of the world. We've got to take care of our own and focus on American soil. So why the shift and why now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of distance between nation building, which clearly President Trump was against, versus simply doing nothing in the face of evil. And I think bottom line is that Assad tested what Secretary Tillerson said last week, where he said the fate of Assad is up to the Syrian people. That's basically what Iran and Assad wanted
to hear.
So they saw that as a green light. They tested it. Mr. Trump actually listens to his military, and he launched an operation. They saw the pictures. I really believe he was probably moved by what happened and saw what was happening, the gas attack, hundreds injured and many killed, and needed to act, and said that this would not happen on his watch.
What is the relationship between Assad and the growing strength of ISIS?
This is an amazing issue because people think that killing ISIS is a serious strategy. It is not. ISIS is a symptom. If Assad wanted to get rid of ISIS, you wouldn't need America, France, and Britain bombing ISIS in Raqqa. They use it as this pit bull in the backyard to legitimize tyranny against the general public in Syria. They've been bombing where our families are in Aleppo, carpet bombing, and now they moved to Idlib recently where this chemical attack happened. So the bottom line is that Assad has no interest, neither does Russia, in getting rid of ISIS. They've allowed their open borders to bring in jihadists from all over the planet to fight for ISIS, while they use that to decimate the majority of the Syrian population. So I think as Americans look at, are we getting involved in another war? We are at war, and the refugees, the millions that went into Europe, would not be going there had the Assad regime not handed them passports and allowed this cancer of ISIS and the primary problem, which is the Assad regime, to fester.
Spread around the world. Last thing, what happens next? This action relatively small in its effect, but certainly large in message.
That's a great question. I mean, clearly we've sent a message yesterday and today. What does happen next? We need to understand what a Trump doctrine looks like in Syria. I think a strategy needs to include telling Iran and Russia to finally move out, let Syrian people actually determine their own fate, Two, tell the Saudis and the Qataris and the Turks not to radicalize the Syrian population, as has been happening in our absence. Third is to start to have safe zones for humanitarian support and to actually allow the opposition to organize. And eventually, you cannot end ISIS without the end of the Assad regime. It is a tyrannical regime, just as we see in most tyrannies. Iran is a terror state that sponsors terror. Assad sponsors terror. You cannot have a future of Syria with Assad in place.
As we're out of time, a yes or no, should we be accepting Syrian refugees from this point because of this?
Absolutely. We just need to vet against the Islamists who are ISIS sympathizers, which is 20%. The rest, that's what America is, and that's how we'll be safer.
Dr. Jasser, good to see you. Thank you so much.